Hi there, I'm Ultranum, and not too long ago I made a video going over a small amount of your very own Limbus company hot takes, submitted over on my Discord server. And truth be told, I quite liked making that video, so I'm running it back. I asked you guys for more of your Limbus company hot takes, and then proceeded to pick out the worst, funniest and most nonsensical ones I could find to react to today. So sit back, relax and prepare to disagree with half the video at the very least. Also consider subscribing. And we're starting with... Wild Hunt Heathcliff is the most overrated and overglazed unit in the game. While he is good, he is nowhere near the way people describe him to be. Now, this person here thinks that Wild Hunt does not deserve the praise that he gets, and should not be considered a top-tier unit by Limbus Company's community. And I'll have to disagree with that. It's true that Wild Hunt Heathcliff has seen better days in terms of his place in the meta, but I'd say it's a bit too early to put him on fraud watch like Wei Sang. Heathcliff gets great damage, powerful scaling, nice sinking infliction and access to AoE, making him a powerful unit that covers all your needs. That being said, he's no longer a contender for the spot of the best in the game, with monsters like Managedon, Mao Faust, the Full Stops and some others running around. On top of that, Lament, Mourn and Despair, his greatest asset, is a spammable yet inconsistent nuke. If you get lucky, the skill deals insane damage, and each use of it only makes Heathcliff stronger. But if you keep hitting heads, all you'll get are laughable damage numbers and disappointment. Worst of all, you can't even make the skill consistent, as Heathcliff needs to be at 15 SP or higher in order to turn his counter into Lament, Mourn and Despair, so his nuke is inconsistent by design. But, as we all know, luck directly correlates with skill, so this really is a skill issue. Simply get better and you'll see the true power of Wild Hunt Heathcliff. No, but for real, his peaks are just too high to not consider him super powerful. Yes, he can hit double heads and deal no damage, but he can also output 200 to 300 raw damage every other turn if you get lucky. Next up, Roseate Desire Ishmael is most definitely the worst ego in the game. All it does is help with clashing, it doesn't even go first in a turn, so it may be mostly or completely worthless for that, while doing pathetic damage with no AoE. Even the bind is useless because it's absurdly rare for a boss's speed to make a major difference. Now, this take is fun, because it talks about the worst ego in the game. And personally, I don't find myself thinking about the worst things in Limbus very often. So, when I saw this, you know I had to comb through every ego skill in the game to find out whether Roseate Desire Ishmael is the worst one. And, after giving some of the most unremarkable skills in the game far too much of my attention, I can confidently say that I agree. Many egos are underwhelming, especially with how much they're eclipsed by the great value of the best among them, so it's easy to dismiss anything that isn't flashy enough as not worth using. But in reality, some underappreciated skills have good effects. The ones that don't have that have attack weight. The ones that don't have either often get good rolls. But Roseate Desire Ishmael really just gets nothing. The skill gets a negative coin in Awakening and a positive coin in Corrosion, so don't expect hitting a decent roll with it. It only has one attack weight, so it can't even inflate its damage by hitting into a crowd. Additionally, it has wonky targeting in unfocused encounters, so have fun with that. The offense level down is applied on the same turn, which is just great considering the high amount of viable haste-stacking Ishmael identities. The paralyze is fine, until a singular skill eats all the stacks. And the bind is literally the most reliable part of the skill. Its passive is also more bind, and much like the poster said, bind is rarely a very impactful effect, so that being the best part of Rosate Desire really does not help. But hey, if you've got other options for last place, leave them in the comments, and maybe you'll prove me wrong. Next up we have a take submitted by Wellwader, everyone's favorite and the world's only lifetime Stu Sinclair user. I think people who don't like Honglu should be publicly executed. Wellwader, please don't kill me. Well, I'm alive for now, so let's look at another ego take. Egos are extremely overrated and the majority of them are unneeded, base egos excluded. You will really only use egos during major boss fights. Yeah, they're useful in those, but there's still no reason we should be getting as many egos as we do already. Only some egos, that aren't base, are good and worth using or sharding. But getting yet another damage plus status effect ego is boring and lazy, bringing nothing to the game other than the amount of existing egos. Okay, let me begin by saying I disagree with pretty much everything written here. Ego skills are not overrated. In fact, I'd wager they're underutilized by many, if not most players. And that includes the person submitting this, as they're saying egos are there for major boss fights only, which is very far from the truth. A lot of ego skills can pride themselves on their high raw damage, which they often get through attack weight, making skills like that great for clearing waves and speeding up farming in XP excavations. Egos are great in any encounter, be it a human fight, a boss, an abnormality, a trio fight or whatever else, as there's always a button you want to press for greater power or faster clears. Additionally, it's not like we're getting a lot of boring damage plus status effect ego skills. Crushbound Past sets up an entanglement, which can be very valuable. In the Name of Love and Hate gives an extra copy of skill 3 to its paired identity. Tears of the Tarnished Blood actively drive their users to death for more damage, and so on. So really, ego skills are awesome and you should be using more of them. Moving on, we have a hot take submitted literally by Lei Heng. You know, the guy from 830, the winged tiger? That guy. And it reads something like this. I think, outside of a few examples, what is meta in Limbus is much more difficult to assess and subjective than people give it credit for. The main issue with how people look at the meta, in my eyes, is that they tend to do so from the perspective of speed or consistency. There are plenty of ideas I feel are over or underrated due to people seeing what they are capable of at the best possible RNG/conditions and leaving it at that. I think if gameplay ever gets significantly harder, people will begin to value consistency more. This is actually close to a thought that I keep having when talking about the strength of identities in my videos. More specifically, the part about speed and consistency being two key players in determining the place of identities in the meta. It's true that oftentimes units that can reach incredible ceilings are considered to be far better than others simply because of the final numbers. But at the same time, with the randomness of skill rotations, coin rolls and whatever other bullshit this game has going on, that ceiling isn't always reachable in an adequate amount of time or even at all. But while that much is true, and while it can make it difficult to get the full value out of an ID with a really high ceiling, the inconsistency of a unit does not take away from its power. And in a game that is so easy to beat, even with units that are clearly far from the top, the only way to make your clears better is speed, which is why identities that can greatly contribute to the lowest turn counts on given encounters are considered the most effective units available. So really, I don't have an issue with speed being used as the main way of determining which IDs are good and which are suboptimal. It's true that if the game ever gets harder, speed will likely stop being the key contributor. But that's a big if, with how we have been rolling ever since launch. Next up, Wei Sang is better as an end closer Uma, not a pace chaser. Well, if we look at Wei Sang, we can see that he has the highest HP in the Rapture team, while having fairly average clash power values for the current season. So as an Uma Musume, he for sure has high stamina growth, but not much power. Assuming equal affinity, the stat growth already pushes him into the pace chaser role. But there's more. The SSR Dimension Shredder support card provides Yi Sang with a pace chaser exclusive golden recovery skill, Count Positivity, which is why he most assuredly should be run as a pace chaser, not an end closer. What am I talking about? Anyways, time for a lightning round, because many of your takes are really short and really bad. Blade Lineage Yi Sang is better than Fell Bullet Yi Sang.
아직 공동 유적을 남길 때는 아닌 것 같아.
Burn is the most lazy and uninspired status, and I wish we had more things for it. Weird to say that when charge is right there. At least Burn gets Dark Flame, a Tremor synergy, and some interesting identities. Koda is better than Mao Faust. No, she's not, but she is number 2 in my eyes. Contempt or Ryoshu is going to be the greatest ID in the game and will be unstoppable. Tremor Hybrid. Queen of Hatred Dawn is the worst Walpurgisnacht ID in the entire game. Worse than Regret Faust. Not even close. She's a very powerful unit when used by a player that can pilot a charge envy team correctly. But that team in itself is not as good as other options, which really is the only drawback and can be solved with more IDs being released. Otis is the least likable woman out of the whole cast. Fight me. This might come as a surprise, considering my reputation as a Barber Otis Glazer, but I really don't like Otis's character. So I agree. Zilu can do... And we're done with the lightning round. Let's go back to some longer takes. I don't think kids in the Roblox side of things should get into Limbus company. While I am thankful for the attention Limbus got, I think there are a lot of children that aren't ready for Limbus's overall narrative and philosophical arguments. Not to mention the city in general. A pretty cold take really, but one that I feel needs to be brought up more often. Weird that a person with the PMCH tag is saying it, but they're right. Limbus company's age rating is 17 plus to 19 plus, depending on the region and platform, so the game is simply not meant for the vast majority of people who found it through Roblox. You know, I'm happy you like the characters being ripped off for your little blog game, but leave it at that. I still don't know why PMCH is fine with kids in the community. Next up, season highlight IDs should be locked until you beat their Kanto. While this is a pretty good idea gameplay-wise, as seasonal highlight IDs tend to be incredibly strong, so much so that they can trivialize most of the story on their own, implementing this idea, much like any other version of certain IDs need to be progression locked, would be financial suicide for Project Moon. You take the cool hype new identity and you force any new player who wants to start playing and pull for it to spend months getting to the latest Kanto just to unlock access to it? Yeah, that would cut into the pockets of Project Moon while fixing an issue that really isn't that big to begin with. I see where you're coming from, but such a change is not feasible at all in a gacha game. Now we have: the gameplay of Limbus does not matter as much as the story. It's a story game first. Hero is the best melee song in Limbus. Honestly, I hate seeing this. While the idea of Limbus being a story game first is not incorrect by any means, this exact statement is often used to discredit any criticism in regards to Limbus gameplay. While I'm not even sure if the original poster meant it that way, I'm taking it as a way to deflect criticism anyways. Yes, Limbus is primarily a story game. No, Limbus being story focused does not excuse its gameplay being ass. There are so many games with interesting lore and stories that all have good gameplay. These things are not mutually exclusive, and I'm tired of people pretending like that's the case. Also, I didn't care much for Hero, but that's just me, it's a matter of preference. Heisho Sinclair and Wei Sang are like the best in the game. Kanto 5 is underwhelming. You know, I get it. Me too. I want the collab egos to be mid as fuck. Honestly, kinda same, but not really. What I want with the collab egos is for them to be very situational, but incredibly impactful in those situations, while being underwhelming outside of them. That way, I feel like the crowd that wants hype and strong ego skills gets their fill by looking at the egos in their peak performance, and the players that are preying on the collab's downfall get to enjoy the fact that the wider meta will not be shaken, just very specific fights and/or playstyles. That's my take on what I want with the Arknight's egos. But what do you think? Leave a comment below. And for the final take of the video, I will leave you guys with a truth nuke. Enjoy! Kim Ji-hoon calling Limbus Company and Project Moon as a whole a platform for his selfish ideation/expression, while expressing fears over the demands of a growing player base, is basically an attempt to communicate that he does not really intend to take player feedback into account with regards to the game's direction, without directly saying that to our faces. Wherever the game goes, it will go there because he'll stubbornly commit to it, and he's expressed that he has no issues with the current player base falling off and people taking extended breaks from the game due to content droughts. This is not in reference to relatively minor changes like nerfing a boss or reverting an unpopular ID nerf, as those don't have as much impact on the game's overall direction as the lack of a meaningfully challenging endgame, the rapidly accelerating power creep in tandem with explicitly hyper-specific kid synergies and teammates, and sparse content drops once the season's main canto is concluded. I do not see those changing, not because I doubt the merit of the criticisms of the game's content, nor do I doubt that Project Moon hears those criticisms. What I doubt is if the guy in charge of these decisions even cares about the consequences of those criticisms going unanswered. It may sound defeatist, but this is how I feel about where the game is going, and to try and push back against it is to be standing in moving water. You can choose to either tolerate it enough to try and enjoy the parts of the game you still like, or you uninstall. Addition, a common retort I've heard is that the game's intent is to tell a story, not be a live service. While partially true, hell, that's how I viewed the game until recently, consider that PM made the active choice to release this as a free-to-play title and market it as a released game with regular updates, not an early access / work in progress indie title. They chose this content model willingly, and thus they are justifiably held to the standards of such a model. Yep, that's it. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and get ready for me to absolutely tear the new Ryoshu to shreds if she does not get good numbers. Goodbye!